So today I'm going to be talking about briefly on registrations. I'm going to briefly touch on keyboard splits, but the main thing I'm going to show you is a lot of people gripe about the fact that the Tyros, if you set a set of voices for your voice channels in one registry, and then you set a set of voices for the second registry, and if you hit your registry key while you're playing, you switch from one to the next, say you're holding down the trumpet, a long note on the trumpet, you switch over to registry number 2, it loads up another set of voices, and instantly your trumpet's going to sound funky. And a lot of people will say, well, it should just carry over the note. It should be able to, it's polyphonic. It should be able to keep playing that note, and then when you pick up your hand, then play the new sound and be smooth. It shouldn't just screw up the whole note. Well, what you have to understand is it is polyphonic. It isn't screwing up the note. The thing that's not polyphonic is the effects processor. Let's focus on the parts. You've only got 3 parts for the right hand, 1 part for the left hand. You can split those however you want. You have your registries and you have your voices. You only have 1 effects part. Any of the effects you have assigned to an instrument. When you change to a different instrument, it doesn't matter if you're holding down a note like the harmonica. If you change to a different instrument that's got different effects, that's what you're hearing. That is what's screwing up your transition. Not the fact that you're changing to a different instrument. It's the fact that the instrument you're changing to has different effects, has different volume levels. So you basically change, when you change instruments, it has preset mixer controls, for the lack of a better explanation. I'm actually referring to things like the effects processor, the volume control, and the EQ. You have only 1 EQ for voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, and 1 EQ for the left hand. There's only 1 EQ for each of those. So if you change instruments on voice 1, say you're holding down the trumpet, and then you switch to another instrument while you're holding down that trumpet, and you'll still hear the trumpet keep playing, but you'll hear like a drop in the sound, and then the trumpet may come back, but it sounds different. That is not because it can't do polyphonic. That's not because it's screwing up on the instrument itself. You've changed the effects. You've only got 1 effect. So you can actually, if you make sure that the instruments you are changing to and transitioning from one to the next as you play your song are using the same volume levels and the same effects, it will transition smoothly. If you're holding down a trumpet and you switch to an accordion, the trumpet will not waver. It will sound like a trumpet until you let off, and the next key you hit will be the accordion, and it will sound right. If you do not adjust your effects and your volume for the next transition to match the previous instrument's settings, that's where you will see the falter. That's where it loses it. The polyphony is just fine. It's the issue that you've only got 1 effects processor. That's where the problem arises. I've just set up a real simple registry with a accordion on 1 channel, 1 registry, and a trumpet on another registry, and I've just made sure that my volume and my effects match, and you will see that the transition is smooth. You want to make sure the volume matches on your instruments. Now in this particular example, I'm not using the DSP, so I don't have to make it match. The DSP is off. But the important thing to notice is here, as we're in the harmonica, notice that the volume is matching, is 112. When I switch over to the jazz trumpet, notice the volume stays the same. Likewise, if I go into these settings here, modulation and aftertouch, if you are using modulation and you switch from one instrument to the next and they don't match, okay, that's jazz, that is the jazz trumpet, that is the harmonica. And so you see they match. If they don't match, if the modulation doesn't match, as soon as you switch from one instrument to the next, your modulation is going to change how the instrument sounds. Again, filter settings, I make sure they match. In the sound, none of this applies for the attack, decay, and stuff like this. However, filters do apply. EQ. Same thing. Notice when I'm in the EQ, 3.2, 7 dB, 125, 0 dB. That's on the trumpet. If I switch back over here to the harmonica, I made sure the EQs match because, again, you only have one mixing board in this. It has nothing to do with polyphony of the instrument. So, again, now we're going to go back to the main mixing board. You want to check and just make sure all the settings match. So I'm going to just toggle between, I'm just toggling between my registry, which I have the trumpet in this one, and I've got the harmonica in this one, just for a quick switch. And I've just set them up so that all the values match. So you can see right now I just switched to trumpet, I switch back to harmonica, it's all the same. Same with the effects. Now I'm not using the DSP, but if I was, you would want to make sure it's the same. I am using these effects here, and now, for example, this is harmonica, this is trumpet. Notice it never changes. Likewise, there's the EQ setting. Again, this is an EQ setting on the mixer board. The other EQ setting that I showed you was for the instrument itself. So you need to make sure everything matches all the way through. Now, you don't have to actually save the instrument, and that's when I'll show you a little bit about the registry. You don't have to save and create a new instrument and all that for this. Basically, you just need to make sure everything matches. Notice right 1, that's for the harmonica. Right 2, that's for the trumpet. Right 1, that's for the trumpet. I'm just switching, again, I'm just switching over here. So all the mixing effects match. The instruments are still unique. So notice I'm going to switch. So now we're on the harmonica. So there you have it. You can switch instruments midstream as long as you're not changing the effects. That's all you have to do. You could actually keep this channel open and use another instrument and switch in registry and have a smooth transition from one registry to the next as long as the mixer settings match. So that's the first little secret. I want to show you with the registry real quick how I set that up so you don't have to save a patch every time you make these kind of changes. All you have to do is make a registry entry, and that's really, really easy. When you go to save your registry, by default it's set to save pretty much every setting on your keyboard. There's only a few settings that don't get saved, like whether or not the OTS link is on, whether or not drum fills are on. Those kind of settings don't necessarily translate into the registry setting, but things like tempo, things like your instrument. Every setting you set for that instrument can be saved in that registry. You don't have to create a whole new instrument. You can take the trumpet, make some tweaking settings to it, and just save it in the registry. You don't have to have 20 different trumpets. You can make a registry for your song that you could name the registry whatever you want, specify the instruments exactly how you want, set the EQ settings, set the internal voice settings for each instrument, save the registry, and you don't have to save the patch of the instrument. It will still be there no matter what. So every time you hit that registry button. So let me just show you real quick again how you save and make a registry, because they're really easy. I'm not going to go into huge detail. I'm going to just do a quick registry example here. For example, we have these two buttons open here on the registry, and say I want to use I want this to be the organ flutes. I want this instrument to be on, and I want to be horns. I want this instrument to be on, and I want it to be that chorus sound. So we have all these instruments on, and now what we're going to do is, this is just to show you quick how to save a registry. So we would simply hit memory, and notice I have everything checked. If you say check the song, it just means any song settings would be checked. So that's all that means, but these are all the settings that can save in the registry. So I hit the memory button, which you just saw, and I hit the registry I want to save it into, and now wham, that registry is saved. That's all you do to create a registry. You don't have to, like I say, you don't have to save different. If you set specifics on that instrument, like I showed you earlier with the volume controls and all that, everything is saved. And so when you switch, notice if I go to 2, and then back, So that's all you have to do to save a registry. And then you can write the registry by hitting, see it says registry bank, hit both these buttons together, and it'll bring up the registry bank, and you notice the save button right here. So you hit save, which I can't save right now because I'm recording this, and then you would save the registry. So that is literally all you have to do to create a registry. So now I've shown you how you can take and have multiple voice patches and go through the different registries and make sure that they don't drop off. If you're wondering what I'm referring to, maybe you haven't noticed this, let's go back to here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this voice to the original EQ settings. Well, I'm going to show you on the accordion. So if I go over here to accordion, notice the hall setting is at 30, the EQ is at 40, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to reload the harmonica. I'm just going to pick a different instrument, go back to the harmonica, and now let's look at those settings. If we look at the EQ, notice it's different. The horn was at 40. Notice the reverb. If you go and look at the instrument itself, let's go into the instrument settings, view. You'll notice, if you recall, if I go to like common here, remember the volume was up to 112. So there's all these settings that have changed too, as I mentioned, which were saved in the registry, but I overrode it by reloading that voice sample directly from the keyboard. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that into the registry. And so what I've done is I've overwritten my working registry with the harmonica as its default setting. Now I'm going to show you how the voice transition will no longer work. Or let's go back to the harmonica. Notice now you hear the transition. And the reason why is because, for example, the harmonica has DSP on, the trumpet did not. The harmonica has a different volume level than the trumpet. The harmonica now has, if you go back and look at, for example, at the effect, the mixing, it does the frequency for the high at a different point. Instead of 3.2, it's doing it at 4.5. Because the mixing didn't match the instrument's sound, you can hear the change. But it's not because you changed the actual instrument. And so now what I'm going to cover with you is how to stage the board. I don't know if that's the correct way to refer to this, and I don't know that a lot of people know you can do this, but you can do so much more than what's in your registries without having to create a bunch of registries. You'll notice when you pick any of these buttons here, like this is currently the piano, and notice the piano pulled up, amber piano. And when I click electric piano, notice it pulled up sparkle stack. And when I click on organ, notice it pulled up white bars. Now I want to just use those three as an example. But what can we do with this? Well, say you're playing along and you wanted to use three instruments, but say that you didn't want white bars. Say you wanted to switch between rock organ. So we were under the organ, I picked rock organ. Now I'm going to go back to the electric piano, and now I'm going to pick magnetics, and then I'm going to go back to regular piano, and I'm going to pick concert grand. And just for the heck of it, let's go to trumpet. And what does trumpet have? Trumpet has the jazz trumpet. Let's do the cornet. What did I just do? I now staged those four selectors to be on those instruments. If I switch back and forth, they're going to default to the last instrument I put it on. So what that means is, and just so you know, all that information gets saved in the registry. So as you're playing, if you had a specific trumpet you wanted, and a specific electric piano you wanted, a specific regular piano, and whatever other instruments, you could set all those and save it under one registry. And then you just simply hit up the instrument bank that you want while you're playing, and it will be on that instrument. And you don't have to switch registries. It's just one more way that you can make a live performance a lot more versatile. And again, in the next registry, if you set up registry 2, you could lay out a whole new set of default instruments of while you're playing that would be selected when you hit any of the instrument banks. So that's just one more way you can get your keyboard staged for what you're trying to play at that moment. So now we've talked about staging all the voice banks to the instruments that you want default, and you could save that into a registry. So the last thing I want to talk about is the splits. To do a keyboard split, you go to Function, and then you're going to go to Split Style. And basically all you do is you've got several split points. You've got your style and left hand of where you want to split. Now if you want your style and your left hand to be at the same split point, you simply hold down this button and then press on the keyboard where you want that split point to be. So for example, I've now moved that split point up to there. Now what's happened is the right hand has to move one note above it because the right hand has to be above it. Now, so that's how you just set your split point. If you want your style to be a separate place than your left hand, you can just hold down the S button, and let's go set our split point for our style way over here. And now you see the style is from here to here, your left hand is from here to here, and your right hand is all the way up. Now, if you move a gap between your left and your right, it will do right 1 and 2, and then right 3 will be on this side of the gap. So we can hold down the right button, and let's just press up here. So these are all where the points are at. Now when your keyboard is only set with one instrument, it's saying the whole keyboard is that instrument. But as soon as I add more instruments, like right 2, now you can see where the split point comes into play. Right 2 is right here. Then if I turn on the left, now the left goes from here to here, and if I turn on accompaniment, then you can see the accompaniment kick on, and you can see where the split points are at. Now notice right 1 is right here, so where does right 2 go? Right 1 and right 2 are combined. So right 1 and right 2 will go right through here, and they are tied together. So that's how the splits work. As you turn off things, the keyboard frees it up for what you want. So I just turned off the accompaniment. If I turn off right 3, then the split point is right there. And that's a quick rundown of how the splits work. So then the last thing you want to consider with a split is octaves. You can actually set a split to be on the same octave. So I've loaded up a new registry. Now, what we've got is I've got a standard split. Now what I want you to notice is, if you hear this, they're both the same C. So you can have two instruments at the same octaves on the split keyboard. Now how did I do that? Well, if you recall earlier, when I went into an instrument, I'm going to go back to the piano here just to show you. So I'm on ambient piano. Let's go ahead and view the set, the voice set. And so I'm going to hit the button here to do the voice set. And we're going to go over here to common. And if you look, this is the octave it's going to be when I play it on right 1, 2, or 3. And this is where it'll be when I play it on left. Let's go ahead and look at the other instrument, okay, which I have assigned to left. Let's go to that instrument. I have raised left up 1 octave, okay? So that's on this particular instrument. So the default, for example, if it was down 1 octave, now let's raise it 1 octave. And say I wanted the ambient piano to actually be lower than, say I wanted my right hand to be a lower note than my left hand. The ambient piano is on my right hand, so let's go ahead and change this in the voice set under common. And we're going to change that down to, we'll get really drastic. go. Now you can even take it further. Let's go to another instrument. You can have any instruments be at a different pitch. So for example, let's go ahead and go to instrument number 3, and let's go ahead and bring it up one. Can you hear it? So each instrument can have its own rule. So for example, instrument 3 is 2 octaves above, instrument 1 is 2 octaves below, and the left hand is 1 octave above. So you can take each instrument and assign them to a different octave, along with assigning them to different parts of the split, depending on if you put it on left, right 1, 2, or 3. That change I made with the voice octave, you can just simply save that in the registry when you set it all up. You don't have to save that as a voice. You just save your keyboard how you got it set up, and you just go back to that registry. So let's review what I've covered in this video. We've covered how to save a registry. We've covered how to split the keyboard. We've covered how to change the octave levels for individual instruments, regardless of their split point. We've covered how to stage which instrument is pre-selected for the voice bank set. And we've covered how to make smooth transitions from one voice to the next as you're playing by making sure all the mixing settings match. I think that's pretty much what we covered in this video. I hope you find it helpful, and have fun with your Tyros.